Good afternoon, students. My name is Francis. Today we have the subject biology, and the topic before us is reproduction in flowering plants. Let's go by introduction. We say flowering plants are otherwise known as angiosperm because they have both male and female reproductive system. That is why they are able to carry out what we call sexual reproduction. The flower is a reproductive structure of a flowering plant. That organ where reproduction takes place, that part of a plant where reproduction takes place is actually the flower. The flower is the reproductive structure of a flowering plant. It has both male and female sex organs. Hence, it can carry out sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction involves two opposite gametes, that is male and female. Flower being a living organism, a plant, also have what we call the male and the female sexual organs. After fertilization has taken place in flower, seed are produced. So after fertilization, seed eventually is produced and then fruiting of the plant takes place. A flower has two major parts. We call them floral parts. Like in a flower, we have what we call the floral part. That is the circle with which the flower, you can have a typical example of a flower in this diagram. These are called the floral part. We have what we call the sepal, otherwise known as the calyx. Then we have what we call the petal. The petal is the brightly colored part, the conspicuous part, that is the part that is easily seen. The colored part of a flower is called the petal or corolla. That is second. Then we have another one called the stamen. The stamen is the male sexual part of a flower, which consists of the anther and the filament. Then we have the last one, which is called the pistil. We say floral part, the stamen, the pistil, the petal, and the sepal. So the pistil consists of the stigma, which is the point where the nectar is produced at this tip. We have the style and the ovary. So these are all the four floral parts of a flower, otherwise known as the hulls. Then we have what we call the flower stalk or pedicel. Of course, this. Now, let's move on. The floral part of the flower is formed by a calyx, which you have said. The calyx is otherwise known as the sepal. The corolla, which is otherwise known as the petal. Androcium, which is the male sexual part of a flower, otherwise known as the stamen. Then the last one, which is the gymnosium, which is the carpel. These are the four floral parts in a given flower. The four floral parts are calyx, corolla, androcium, and gymnosium. Now, there are some terms we use in flowering plants. Their terminology, we said sepal. The sepal is defined as the outer part of the flower. In fact, it is the green area of the flower where photosynthesis takes place. In every flower, the green part is always at the base here, which is called the sepal. It's at the place where photosynthesis takes place. It's often green and leaf-like that encloses a developing bud. At this place, we have a bud shooting out from here. It's always green in color. Then we have the next one is the petal. The petal is always very, very conspicuous and is brightly colored. The part of a flower that are often conspicuous and colored, these are the parts that gives flower its beauty. Then, of course, we have the stamen. The stamen is the pollen-producing part of a flower, usually with a slender filament supporting it. Look at this. This is the stamen consisting of the filament, which is the structure that hangs or that sustains this anther. Anther is where the pollen grain, the pollen grains is the seed, the male reproductive cell of a plant is located. So the stamen consists of the filament and the anther. Then the next is the pistil. The pistil is made up of this, which is the female sexual reproductive part, which is the stigma style. You can see the pistil, the ovule producing part of a flower. Before the ovule is produced, this extension down here produces the ovary. Inside the ovary is what we call the ovule. This is the female sexual sex cell of a flower. That is the ovary. So surrounding the ovule is the ovary. So these three parts, 1, 2, 3, makes up the pistil, which is the female sexual part. Then we have the stigma. We said, of course, the part of the pistil where pollen grain germinates. This part is often sugary, is often wet for pollen grains to be attached during what we call pollination. We say pollination, in the course of this study, we'll look at pollination, which is the transfer of pollen grains, meaning the pollen grains in this anther can find its way on this stigma by virtue of insect or wind, depending on the agent of pollination. Then we have the next is the ovary. The ovary is the shoot out, the protruded area around this side where the ovule is produced. It is the enlarged basal, all right? It is the enlarged basal portion of the pistil where ovules are produced. The protruded area, the enlarged version of this, is just like the ovary of a woman, you know. It's just like the what do you call it? What do you call this part of a woman? The uterus of a woman, the swollen part where eggs are housed. So at this point, we have the ovule, which is the female sexual cells are housed around this place, which is the ovule. Yes, the receptacle. Of course, this is the receptacle. This area is the receptacle, the part of a flower stalk where parts of the flower are attached. This part that houses all the floral part is called the receptacle. Then the sexes in plants. We have said we have two sexes in plants. Most plants are bisexual, meaning it is possible for a plant to have both male and female sex cell. They have both stamen and carpel, while a few are unisexual, either male or female. Some flowers have the possibility, the advantage of having both male and female sexual parts. So in flower, they are bisexual, you know, and then some of them are unisexual, meaning if there's a particular flower that may have a male organ separate from another which has a female sexual organ. Therefore, a plant can be monoecious or dioecious. Monoecious means if a flower has a single sexual organ, either male or female, we call them monoecious. But they are dioecious if they have both. So monoecious means when both male and female flower occur on the same plant. Monoecious, the same plant having both male and female, housing both male and female. Example are maize. If you look at maize, maize has the male inflorescence and the female at the base, at the middle of the maize. So maize, oak, pine, hazelnut, banana, etc. are examples of monoecious because these plants have both male and female sex organ in them, in one plant. Then dioecious, when the male and female flower are found on different plants. You know, each plant has a male organ differently or a female organ differently. Example include pawpaw. If you look at pawpaw is either you have male pawpaw or female pawpaw, depending on which. So these examples are called Monoecious. Examples of monoecious are pawpaw, ginkgo, dates, spinach, holly, etc. etc. Now, let's look at parts of a typical flower, which we have explained. So, calyx, let's define them. Calyx, this is the outermost hull of a flower. They are green petal-like structure that are found right above the base of the flower, called the receptacle. Just above the receptacle is the calyx or the petal. In the bud stage, calyx enclose the rest of the flower. That is, they protect the flower present in the bud. And this is the last or the outermost part of the whole that protect the entire flower. This is the second layer. Of course, we said the corolla. After the calyx or sepal is the corolla or petal. This is the second layer of the flower, superior to the calyx layer. It consists of petal inside the sepal. Yes, the petal is always housed by the sepal. Petals are the attractive part of the flower and could be up to 4 to 10. We said the petal is the brightly colored area which attracts insects to the plant. You know, this is the beautiful part of the flower that makes attraction to this organism. They can be separated, that is polypetaloid, or joined to form a two gamepetalous. The petals of different flowers are found in different colors. Different flower, different colors. And most of the time, they are fragrant. Fragrant means they often scent, you know. They are fragrant as well. The petals are the colorful part of a flower that helps to attract insects and birds to the flower to facilitate pollination. We said if a flower is beautiful, that part or that organ that gives the flower its beauty is the petal. So it causes the attraction to the plant, thereby, insects and man, you know, animal are attracted to this flower because of the brightly colored petal. And of course, we said pollination takes place because by the time insect peck on this area, first of all, insects see this brightly colored petal and they are attracted. And once they peck on this flower, they thereby rub the anther against the stigma. Exactly. By so doing, they are helping to pollinate, to bring these pollen grains upon this. So that's what we call pollination. Then the next one is androecium, or the male sexual organ in flower. This is the male reproductive part of a flower. It consists of the third hole, that is after the sepal, the next one is the androecium. You can see it as 1, 2, 3. Now, this is the male reproductive part of a flower. It consists of the third hole in the flower. The androecium is made up of a collection of stamen, which could be up to 3 or more. You know, why we say the petal is made up of 4 to 10, the androecium is made up of 3 pairs or more, which could be joined together or fused. The stamen consists of 2 parts. Can we move on? The anther and the filament. The anther is present. It is present at the tip of the filament. It is 2 to 3 lobes structure, which consists of the pollen grains. You can see this is the anther. It's made up of a lobe suspended by the filament. If you break in the anther into fragments, what you find there is the pollen grains. Pollen grains. All right. Which in turn produces the male garment in the flower. At maturity, the anther lobes open to release the pollen grain. So when they are mature, they rupture to release these tiny particles called the pollen grain, which is the male sexual reproductive cell. Then the filament sustaining this anther is the filament, that is holding this is the filament. It is a thin stalk-like structure that holds the anther. This thread-like structure are attached to the anther and they keep the anther in place. It's very, very thin, just like a needle, just like a very tiny thread holding this in. So fragile. The function is just to hold this anther in place. Then the next one is gynosium or carpel. Gynosium is the female reproductive organ of a flower, while the androsium is a male, gynosium is a female reproductive organ. It is the innermost floral part of the flower. You can see this central part is made up of the gynosium. It is the innermost, is the fourth hall. This is the first, second, third, and the fourth hall of a flower. The gynosium is the female reproductive organ of a flower. It is the innermost floral part of a flower. Gynosium consists of the pistil or carpel, which may be one or many. You know, the pistil. This is the pistil. It could be just one, meaning monopistil. Then it could be many. When they are many, when they are single, they are called monocarpous, meaning one carpel. But when they are many, they become polycarpous, meaning they are more. As in this example, this structure, this is just one. So this is a monocarpous flower. But when we have several of these in the particular flower, they call them polycarpous. Example of polycarpous flower is hibiscus flower. Hibiscus flower. A carpel consists of three parts. Number one, the stigma. As you can see, the tip here is the stigma, which is often wet with nectar. It's a small and sticky landing structure. Sticky because it's filled with nectar. This sugary part in the flower is called the nectar, which attracts the insect. It is a small and sticky landing structure. The pollen grains from the same or different flowers stick to it. This structure acts as a landing for pollinating agent. You can see this structure is made up of sugary parts where any structure of the anther, any particles of the anther landing on this thing sticks it together, preventing it from falling because of the sugary aspect here. How? Because insect indirectly pass this on this, by rubbing this against it, because these things are tiny particles. The pollen grains are quite tiny. So while insect is feeding on this nectar, they automatically move this against it. So we call that insect pollination, meaning insect is the one taking this to this, because of the attraction of the sugary part or anther in this, sugary part or nectar in this flower. So thereby rubbing this against it, causing pollination, causing the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. So insect helps in pollination. All right, let's continue. The style. This is the style. This structure joining with the stigma to the ovary. This very structure is the style. It is a small and stick. The style is a thin stalk-like structure. Right? It is a thin stalk-like structure that holds the stigma. It contains an ovule which produces the female gamete. This is the style. The extension of the side downward produces what we call the ovule. The ovule is inside the ovary and it's called the female gamete. After fertilization, by the time the pollen grain enter this, there will be a pollen tube that will grow down here to deposit the male gametes down into the ovary, enter into the ovule. By the time the pollen grains meet with the ovule, there's what we call fertilization. And fertilization will lead to what's called zygote. And eventually the seed will be produced. After fertilization, the ovary develop into fruit, while the ovule develop into seed. You can see after fertilization here, the ovary there, the wall of the ovary now, form what's called the fruit, while inside the fruit is a seed. That is why you see the seed hidden inside the fruit, because the outside the seed is what we call the word. The succulent part of the word of the seed is also the fruit. It's also called the fruit. Now, let's move on. Male and female part of a flower. The male and female part of the flower. The male-female reproductive part of a flower is called the pistil. So, if you are talking about the flower, the structure here, which is the pistil, which is made up of the pistil, is the female reproductive part of the flower. While this structure here, which is the stamen, which consists the anther and the filament, is the male reproductive part of the flower. The male reproductive part of a flower is called the pistil. The female reproductive part of the flower is called the pistil. It is located at the center of the flower, which we have said before. The pistil holds the ovule, or what will become the seed after pollination. This is the pistil, and this is the ovule. After fertilization, the ovule here, which is the central part here, forms the seed. It is easy to identify the pistil by its three distinctive parts. Coming out of the center of the pistil is the tube called the style. From here, this is the style. At the bottom end, the style attaches to the ovary, which is a part of the plant that produces the ovule. Attached to this top of the style is the stigma, a sticky knob that catches the pollen grain. Yes, we've said this, we have explained this before. Yes. Now, the male reproductive part, which is made up of the stamen. Collectively, the male part of the flower is called the stamen. Individually, that means each stamen, the male reproductive part are called the anther and the filament. The filament, which resembles hair-like structure, hold a round pouch on top of it called the anther. The anther produces pollen grains, which held in the small round pouch that sits on top of the filament. So we have explained before, we said this is called the female reproductive cell, which is the pistil, while this is the male reproductive cell. This male, the essence of this is to hold this seed, which is the pollen grains, in place. The pollen grains is contained inside the anther and is being sustained by this. Yes, let's move on. Now let's look at the types of flower we have. We define a flower based on three structures. Number one, the floral parts. That is the rings of flower, the rings of the carpel, petal, stamen, and the pistil. That is the number of holes made. Some of them can be 4, some of them can be 3, some of them can be 10, depending. Then the color of the petal. We can define the flower by their color. Some of them are green, some of them are yellow, some of them are red. Then size and shape of the flower. Now, let's look at the symmetry. What do you mean by symmetry? Symmetry means a flower can be radially symmetrical. That is, when a flower can be divided into different sections, still giving you the same. When a flower can be splitted into different sections, still giving you, looking the same way, half of them looking the same way. We call them, they say they are radially symmetrical, meaning if a flower, for instance, if a flower can be divided into different structures, meaning like this, like this, like this, like they still give you this. Half of this flower resemble themselves. So for this flower now, we can split this into this stage. This half resemble this half. We can still turn and split again. They resemble themselves. So we say flower can be radially symmetrical or regularly actinomorphic, or irregular. It can be irregular or regular. That is zygomorphic. Incomplete flower. A complete flower has all the flower parts. That is sepal, petal, and the 4 flower parts. For a flower to be said to be complete, it must have all the 4 flower parts. So a flower can be regular, symmetrical, meaning if they can be seen in different, they can be divided into equal half. Then we have a flower can be called a complete flower if it contains all the 4 floral parts. A complete flower has all the 4 floral parts, that is the sepal, petal, androecium, and gymnasium are present. An example is flamboyant flower. While an incomplete flower lack one of them, at least one of them will be lacking. We have seen some flower that instead of having the 4, you might have the 3. It's either you have the sepal, carpel, and the sepal, not having the pistil, or either of them. Then we have a flower, perfect and imperfect flower. When we say a flower is perfect, a flower has both androecium and gymnasium. A perfect flower has both male and female organ in them. It is called a perfect flower. Both androecium and gymnasium makes a perfect flower. While an imperfect flower is one which either the androecium or gymnasium is missing. In this case, a flower may have only the male or the female. So we said it's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect flower. It's also called unisex flower. You know, when you have both male and female, it's called unisex. Example of purple and maize. You see, purple we have male purple, we have female purple. You know, these are unisex. A flower with only one stamen is a male flower and it's called staminate. When the flower has only one of these male's reproductive sex, which is the androecium, we call them staminates. Staminate. While a flower with only one carpel is called pistillate. You know, it's possible for a flower to have just one of this structure. If it has the female, we call the pistillate. If it has the male, we call the staminate. Yes. Now, position of the ovary. You can say from this structure, we call this place the ovary. This side is the ovary. The ovary is positioned in such a way that we can have it above all the floral parts. In this diagram, you can see the ovary is above the floral parts. And in some flower, the ovary can be seen below the floral parts. In some flower, the ovary can be seen in between the floral parts. I'm sure you know what I mean by floral part. This ring, the sepal, the corolla, the anther, which is the stamen, and the pistil. These 4. So the position of this ovary can be defined in the following way. When examining a flower, if you look at a flower just like this, you will see that when examining a flower, you will see that the flower parts can be arranged in different ways. Cutting a flower longitudinally helps to see the position of the ovary. You see, longitudinal section means if you cut this thing like this, of course, if you see a complete flower like this, you may not be able to see the inside, which is the ovary. But by the time you split it open and you turn it, you'll be able to see the position of this ovary very well. So when we split, we can see the shape of different flower, the position of different flower. The flower types are based on the position of, we can see about 3 positions here. Number 1, we have hypogeneous flower. When we say a flower is hypogeneous, a flower is hypogeneous if the sepal, petal, that is the 4 floral parts, are attached to the receptacle below the ovary. Meaning, for a hypogeneous flower, all the 4 floral parts, they are attached below the ovary. As in this diagram, look at the ovary. Ovary is on top, while the other flower part, they are below. So we call this flower, any flower you see in this structure, we call them hypogeneous. Hypo meaning the ovary is above all the floral parts. Is that okay? Now, example include tomato, tulip, hibiscus, and snapdragon. These are examples of hypogeneous flower because why? The ovary is slightly above all the floral parts. They are positioned above all the floral parts. Another type of flower is called perigenous flower. In perigenous flower, a flower, all the floral part of the flower are slightly below the ovary is slightly below all the floral parts. You can see, we say in hypogynous flower, this is above. In this case, this is below all the floral parts. So we said the cup-shaped structure called hepantion, which is inserted beneath the ovary. The ovary in this case is still superior. Example include cherry and prenus. We call them superior flower because the ovary is beneath the four floral parts. The next one is epigynous flower. A flower is epigynous if the sepal, petal, and stamen arise from the top of the ovary or from the hepantium inserted above the ovary. So in this case, the floral parts are above the ovary, meaning the ovary is below all the floral parts. The ovary of an epigynous flower is inferior and is below the other florets. So we call it, why the other one is superior, this is inferior. Why is it called superior? Because the ovary is below the floral part. So we define epigynous flower as a flower that has the ovary below all the four floral parts. They are otherwise known as inferior flower. Now examples include apple, sunflower, cucumber, guava, and daffodil. We have placentation. Placentation is simply the arrangement of the ovule around or within the ovary. Like we said, if we split this longitudinally, we'll be able to see the ovule. The ovule is hidden inside the ovule. So the arrangement, there's a pattern of arrangement of this ovule within the ovary. So that's called placentation. Ovules are attached to the ovary by fleshy structure called placenta. Placenta holds or attach this ovule to the ovary. That attachment, that structure that attaches the ovule to the ovary is what we call the placenta. Through short stalk called funicle. Placentation is defined as the arrangement of the ovule within the ovary of a flower. Now we have different types of arrangement, which gives room to different types of placentation. We have number one, marginal placentation. In marginal placentation, this placentation takes place in monocarpary unicellular ovary, meaning only one carpel. When they say monocarpary or unicellular, it means only one carpel is involved. The ovules are arranged at the margin of the ovary, at the margin of the ovary. We have this arrangement. The placentation forms a ridge along through the ventral structure of the ovary, and the ovules are borne on the ridge to form two rows. That is, they are borne along with the junction of the two margins of the carpel. Example include beans. If you look at the bean structure, if you've ever seen a bean, the pouch of a bean is arranged in such a way that it's attached to a structure here in the pouch. Around a margin here, around the margin like this, you can have about 3-4 seedlings. So that kind of structure or that kind of arrangement is what you call marginal. Example include beans, gram, pear, flamboyant, and sunhen. Okay, the second type of placentation is called parietal placentation. This type of placentation occurs in multicarpellary, syncarpous, unilocular ovary. The ovules are arranged to the side of the ovary or within a single chamber or cavity. They develop in the inner wall of the ovary or on the periphery. For instance, if you look at the pawpaw, for instance, if you do a cross section of the pawpaw, If you cut the purple open, you see something like this. That is the transverse section. You cut it at the side. You see the seed arranged in this fashion at the side. This is called parietal arrangement. Move on. This placentation is single chambered, but due to the formation of a fourth septum, it becomes two chambered. The carpels are only fused by the margin, and the placenta that bears the ovule develop at the places where the two carpels are fused. You understand? Now, example is the mustard, pawpaw, agenum, watermelon, and cucumber. So, if you must remember one example, at least pawpaw is a basic example which you are familiar with. Number 3 is free central placentation. This is the type of arrangement where the ovule develop on the central axis while the septa are absent. The ovules are borne on a knob projecting from the base of the ovary. Example is dianthus and primrose. Number 4, we have the axile placentation. Axile placentation. This type of placentation can be seen in the bi or multicapillary syncypous ovary. The wall of the carpel meets at the center to form the placenta for the attachment of the ovule, like a central column. Example is tomatoes, lemon lady, okra, lemon lady finger, okra, and orange. Please remember, at least tomato is a basic example you can relate with when it comes to axial placentation. Now, the next type of placentation is called basal placentation, that is at the base. This type of placentation can be seen in the bicapillary syncypous and unilocular ovary. The placenta develops directly on the receptacle that bears a single ovule at the base of the ovary. That is, a single ovule develops at the base of the ovary. Examples are sunflower and marigold. The last one is called superficial placentation. This type of placentation takes place in a multicapillary, multilocular ovary. The ovules are borne on a placentae which develops all around the inner surface of the partition wall. An example is the water lily. Example is of superficial placentation is water lily. Now, pollination and fertilization. Pollination, we explained during the course of this class, we said is the transfer of pollen grain from the anther, which is the male sex cell, to the stigma, which is the female sex cell of a flower. So the pollen grains and ovules, the pollen grain, which is the male, and the ovule, which is the female, by themselves cannot travel from one place to the other. There is no possibility for the male and the female to meet. There are other factors such as wind. There are some agents, we call them agents of pollination. You know, there are some agents that helps to cross this two structure in their path. So they are either wind, water, or animal. So when it comes to wind, we say wind pollinating flower or pollinating flower. When it comes to water, we say wind, water pollinating flower or animal. So we either have wind, water, or animal that enable the pollen grains to travel to the stigma of the same or another flower. The process by which pollen grains are transferred from the anther of one flower to the stigma of the same or another flower is known as pollination. So pollination can either be from the anther of a particular flower to add to the stigma of another flower. When it comes to one flower to the other, we call it cross-pollination. But when it comes to transfer of the anther to the stigma of the same flower, it is known as self-pollination. Self-pollination. Once the pollen grains carrying the male gamete reaches the stigma of the same or different flower, it is transported downward via the pollen tube that arises from the pollen grain to reach the ovary. So we can see this as this structure, which is the pollen tube, transferred here. There will be a growth called the gold pollen tube. A tube will occur here, transferring the seed in the pollen grain into the ovule, thereby carrying out what we call fertilization. The male gamete from the pollen now fuse with the female gamete in the ovule to form a zygote. You know, after fertilization, zygote is formed. This zygote undergoes cell division. There are several divisions until seed is formed. You know, embryo. Once the embryo starts developing, the ovary develop into fruits. The other structure like the calyx and the corolla fall off. The embryo develops into seed, while the ovary develop into fruits. So the embryo becomes the seed that has the potential to give rise to a new plant. The second gamete that unites with the polar nucleus results in the formation of endosperm nucleus, which supply nourishment to the embryo. So the embryo is, fed by the nucleus, the endosperm nucleus. Typical examples, typically the zygote splits only after some amount of endosperm is formed. This ensures nutrition is rendered to the developing embryo. The fertilization ultimately turns ovule into seed, while the ovary develop into fruit. So like we said, the pollen grain fuses with the ovule to form the seed, while the overall side of the ovary develop the fruit. So thank you for today's class. Please ensure you subscribe to this channel. Go through the subscription button and subscribe to this channel. Thank you.